Okay, welcome everybody to this, the last session of today. We seem to have lost a few people along the way in this huge room, but I guess the most important people are here, and that's because you're here. Right, this final session is really changing the emphasis of this Congress and moving, as far as I can see, in a much more positive direction towards thinking about the future. And we're launching here our vision for organic food and farming to 2030. And the purpose is to present the vision statement and the supporting evidence that IFOAM EU group has put together, which I hope you all have a copy of. We're going to be reading from this. This is an interactive session, so it would be helpful to make sure that if you don't have one, your neighbour does, because we're going to have to come together and we're going to be actually reading together some of the text. And this is the start of a process. The first step, if you like, is now over in the completion of this document. The second step is now, this session where we're presenting it and getting comments from key sector representatives. The third step will be tomorrow, when we'll be thinking about sector-specific strategies for achieving our vision. And then the most important step is where we're turning it over to you, to groups, farmers, processors, researchers, to develop sector-specific strategies. And that will involve engagement with all of you. But what I want to do now is to invite Raffaele Zanoli, the professor from the Università Marche in Italy, who had an immensely important role in the creation of this document through facilitating a process alongside IFOAM EU Group's Julia Balabanova, who actually also was central to the process and has done a really, really good job. And I think the document is a credit both to Raffaele and to Julia, with a little bit of help from everybody else. But they've really brought it together. So what we're going to have is Raffaele giving an introduction, an outline of what the vision is, what the process was. In a sense, taking you through the document, I guess, in a way. And then what I'm keen to get is some comments and reactions from three people that are here to offer their views on the vision from three different perspectives. So on my immediate left, Sannen, who's the chair of Bioforum, the Belgian umbrella organisation for organic farming, who is a farmer. Then on my next left, Klaus Arntz, who's the executive vice president for marketing, quality and R&D at Wessanen, which, if you like, is a business, a food processor, but he's representing the business interests. And finally, Professor Niggli, the director of FiBL, who is representing research and innovation interests. And what I'm hoping is, after Raffaele has given this outline and inspired us all to understand our common vision, that we'll have a reaction, and we've asked specific questions which our speakers can either stick to or go off-piste if they want and tell us something else, but to give a reaction from the perspective of those representative groups. And then we'll have the pleasure of having Marco, our director, closing the day and letting us go and enjoy a good evening of good food. So, Raffaele, can I ask you to make this initial presentation, and then we'll see where we go.
Yes. Hello. Hello, everybody. When Markus Schluter asked me to facilitate this process, I felt very honored, because I was in a strange position in this situation, because I am a stakeholder myself. My family is an organic farming family, but I am also a researcher and a consultant in organic farming since more than 30 years. And with immense help, which just Christopher has reminded of the office, and in particular of Julia Balabanova from the IFOAM EU office, I was asked to facilitate this process, where I had to uphold, to live out my own visions of the future of organic farming in order to give room and help all the actors in the sectors to contribute to the vision and the dreams of a sector. So, indeed, in this period we had a wealth, a great abundance of dreams, hopes, aspirations that made this document that you are reading here quite an interesting document to prepare, to work on it, but I hope also to work with it in the next coming years. First of all, I want to remember that a vision is, first of all, a big dream. It's not something that needs to be concrete or very short-term, but this is a long-term, 2030 at minimum, vision of what the sector should be by that time. So it's a dream. It's a dream where we won't have a shared vision of this future. And indeed, this was the experience we had since I was involved in this process, that this vision is going to be shared by many people, and that was in fact the case. What I will do now is I want to introduce a little bit on the main themes of the vision. If you know, this process has been quite long, it's been taking more than a year. I was engaged around October to help the last bits of the process, and it involved a lot of stakeholders into this, with different consultation and so on. And this vision, this final vision, came out after discussion, which were carried on in person and online, and that came on to decide and synthesize in the statement that you find at page 7 of the booklet that you have in your folder, what are the aspirations, the hopes, the dreams that the organic sector has for 2030. These themes can be a little bit summarized in two main goals. The vision represents two main big goals, which is, first of all, having a growth of a sector, a development of a sector, to have more than half of Europe agricultural land managed according to organic principle, without washing out the main principle of fairness, health, caring, and environmental and ecology. So the vision is represented by these main two goals: developing the sector without forgetting the grassroots where we came from. This main vision can be also break down, and in the vision you will find, the vision statement, you will find other goals which can be considered instrumental or secondary to achieve this main goal, which is about having, of course, a more resilient, productive, and environmental sound farming system. You will have to increase biodiversity, to have a better food quality, and to have more appropriate processing and careful processing. The issues of supply chain and the fairness in supply chain, of fair remuneration of every worker in the supply chain is also quite important, as well as animal welfare. Other instrumental aspects are less related to the effect of a growing organic sector in Europe, but it's more about the societal impacts of this. This is about the recognition that the sector should have in the society in the future, in the fact that it's a big contribution to the bioecosystem service to society. The other aspect is, of course, that, as we all know, the consumers and the citizens are looking to the organic sector for the product we are producing. And promoting trust in an innovative way, and promoting trust to be sure and to give assurance to consumers that the products are, in fact, healthy, ecological, sound, fair. It's important that is done properly. And of course, we are in front of big changes in terms of regulation. We've been discussing that, and there is big discussion about how we could continue to give this trust to consumer in different and innovative way, not just stick to the past. All the debate within organic 2.0 and 3.0 you may know about it is related to this aspect. The other elements, of course, which are contained in this statement is about the tools that we are going to use for achieve these goals. And the tools is to be inclusive, first of all, to have citizen support. Organic farming cannot develop to be a tool for transforming society, for transforming food and farming, as the title of the document says, if we don't have citizen support, and also if we don't engage in a constructive dialogue, in a conversation with all elements of society, even with those parts of the agricultural and food and farming sector which are not at the moment allied of the organic sector. We need to build bridges, and that is among the tools that this vision is taking into consideration. Besides, research and development and innovation are a core central tool to make the change that is in the dreams of becoming more than half of agricultural land farmed organically need to be taken in consideration. Without innovation, without participatory research and development, not only done by researchers, but with the participation of all the stakeholders into the development of new ideas, and particularly the vision underline the importance of preserving indigenous and locally adapted varieties and breeds, but also looking at new varieties and breeds which are suited to organic farming. So looking back to what the tradition has been, to what we have always been done, and not to forget at the same time that there is being a looking forward, a research and a development and innovation that can be useful and can be organic and can be matched with organic principles. As we said, the building bridges is important, and innovative tools for upholding the integrity of the supply chain is the final element, which is quite important. Without finding new tools to reassuring and assuring consumers, the organic sector will probably be stuck. We know very well that the issues of certification and to finding new system to, with the growing sector, probably the old system need to be some revised. We need to give new method, we need to be open to new method to assure that the products are organic and that the people can have trust in them. Yes, the whole process has been very participatory from the beginning. Even before I was jumped in to facilitate it. Altogether, there were more than 5 workshops done, and 2 European-wide consultations online, mostly, to collect all the ideas, dreams, and aspirations of the sector. We have had more than 300 contributors. 35 different studies have been selected and read to prepare all the strategic analysis which was behind the preparation of the document, the preparation of the 4 scenarios which will frame also how the vision can be implemented. And after having 2 main visions voted into the consultation, we find with 1 shared vision, which is the one you find at page 7. This vision is the foundation of a future strategy. It's not an ending point, but it's a starting point to build now a strategy for the organic sector for the next years. The vision, of course, is about dreams, and the strategy needs to come back to the concreteness of day-to-day actions, of day-to-day practice. So tomorrow in the workshop that we will hold, the 4 workshops that we will hold during the day of tomorrow, we will speak about strategy. We will think about how to implement this vision into strategy that the sector can follow to achieve the goals which are contained in this vision. But at the same time, taking in consideration that even in the gloomiest scenarios that we can confront in the future, and in this document you will find 4 possible scenarios, not necessarily likely to happen, but they could happen. And these scenarios talk about, for example, what will happen to our Europe. Will Europe continue to be united as we know it, or will the process start with first maybe with Brexit or any other things, and in a few years we will find a different scenarios, a different institutional scenarios, a different way of interacting between us that at the moment we feel something which is past. So we have these options which are open, and some of the scenario talk about this. Also, the technology can go in a very different way. It's important, as we said, that research, development, and innovation policy is driven by certain values. But the values can be going in the same direction, can be compatible with the organic sector, or the values can go in a completely different way, and innovation, research, and development policy can go completely against what our ideals, what our aspiration, what our dreams, what our vision is. So these two big elements frame the 4 scenarios which are contained on this booklet, which I invite you to read if you haven't, particularly if you're going to participate to the 4 workshop tomorrow, where actually you will not be coming to listen there. Nobody will speak, you will speak. So we will ask you to do work. It's a workshop in that sense, that we will ask you to start again the process. As I said, the vision was not the ending point, but the starting point for a strategy. So tomorrow we will start building together the strategy for the sector in the next year. And I'm going to close with the words of Christopher in the presentation. This vision has been a great achievement for the organic sector. The shared vision provides a common direction, and I think we should keep it as a common direction. And I invite now Christopher to read the first 3 paragraphs of the vision, the most central one, the one with the main goals, and I ask you to do a sort of ritual together in order to own the vision. So if you want to assume ownership of the vision, I ask you to either stand or sitting, read together with Christopher the 3 paragraphs of the vision in order to become part of the vision too. If you have participated or not to this vision, it looks like a funny thing. It's not something that normally we do on a stage like that, but feel, we are going to dinner soon, and if you want to have dinner, please stand up and read the vision with us.
Okay. It's actually the first 2 paragraphs that we're going to read together, in fact. And although I think it does seem slightly strange to have this sect-like reading of the vision, I actually accepted doing this because I think we need to get a common purpose. So I'm going to read, and if you feel so moved, please read with me, if not out loud, at least to yourself. So, our vision for food and farming is of a fair, environmentally conscious, healthy and caring system widely adopted in Europe. The European organic movement continues to lead change, believes in holistic approaches, and thrives on interactions with other like-minded initiatives, including fair trade, agroecology, and urban agriculture. Driven by the support of citizens and by building bridges with other stakeholders in the food and farming system, we are committed to achieving more than half of Europe's agricultural land managed according to organic principles of health, fairness, ecology and care, providing fresh, seasonal, fairly priced, as well as minimally and carefully processed organic food to every European home, workplace and institution.
Thank you very
Amen.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So that felt extremely odd, but actually also it felt quite enlivening. Actually, I have a little bit of a tingle going on because actually, when you read it out loud and you recognise that we're trying to get there, that's where I believe the pioneers and all of the people who've been before us have been trying to get to, and there are some big implications arising from those thoughts. So, to start off thinking about those implications, as I said at the beginning, we're going to get the perspectives from 3 people who are willing to put themselves forward as representatives of different parts of our movement. And I'd like to start off, we'll go through in the order that I think is on the programme. So I'm going to start asking Klaus, I'll start with asking Klaus the business end, the sort of end of the supply chain for his reflections. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. maybe I just, start off by saying like 2 or 3 words about, who I'm actually speaking on behalf of, because that maybe, explains where I'm coming from. So Wessanen, we are a business, we're a manufacturer of brands and products, and it's a very old business, 250 years this year, and it's gone through a remarkable transformation over the last 15 years, let's say. Before that, it was a full food multinational. And at the time, the decision was taken to completely refocus this business on healthy, sustainable, organic food. Okay, so in the last 15 years, we've sold an awful lot of businesses, and we have totally focused on organic, healthy, sustainable food in Europe. We also had activities in other parts of the world. So when we speak about the vision for organic or the future for organic, that happens to be our future. Okay, so we've basically bet the entire company on this market and on the fact that it will continue to grow as well as it has, And having said that, we are like super happy, super excited about the work that you've done. I think you've really managed to define a very exciting, a very bold, a very inspiring vision for 2030. And in our own words, we have no doubt that the market has the potential to at least double in the coming 15 years. We see no end in sight. Having said that, I think what you've captured really well, Raffaele, is I think what we see as probably the big challenge for the industry, but also for ourselves, is how can you get bigger, grow out of the niche, in certain ways almost become the mainstream or part of the mainstream without losing what made you strong in the first place, without selling out your ideals. That I think going forward will probably be the biggest issue, because there could be a horror scenario where we go, at least in parts, the way that conventional food has gone. If you get big, things become quite disintegrated, you get into industrial models, you don't know anymore what comes from where and where does it go. You can see a scenario where the consumer trust could be severely impacted, and every now and then you see people already asking questions, to which extent can I really trust that? I think earlier on in the workshop we touched upon the multitude of labels that the consumer is confronted with, and we hear that every single time that we talk to them, and it's not going to get any easier if we get bigger, So the 3 areas that I wanted to pull out of the different questions that you gave us to mull over was, I think the first one is transparency, transparency across the entire value chain. And I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, a point that Martin made earlier. I think we really, support this notion of having a system, maybe a database, which basically gives a transparent representation of all key players and certificates in Europe. Okay, having access to data that makes it easy to understand, who is actually involved in the process. Transparency, we believe, is very important to keep and further build trust. The second one is, and that's in a way a big challenge also to ourselves, is like, how do we build more integrated supply chains? We find that, of course, in many countries in Europe, we have a net deficit, so to say. We're relying heavily on import. And every time we talk to consumers, we find that doesn't necessarily work for them so well. Okay, they tend to think organic also has an element of local, from my country, from my neighborhood. So if you start to explain to them that is actually a product that comes from far away, it gets a bit difficult. And we've just basically welcomed a new member to our family, which is the Abba Foods Isola Bio brand in Italy, where they worked out something that we think might be guiding us into the future a little bit, which is they make dairy alternative drinks, so rice drinks and almond drinks and soy drinks and the likes, and they've basically started to build their own fields, So basically we now have 700 acres of land basically in Italy. So we produce 90% of what we make in our factory, we produce ourselves, And that for us is the exception, but we believe there's something in there for the future that will probably help us to keep things together, you know. So transparency, you know, like a more integrated supply chain. And then thirdly, I think policy, you know, and I'm not going to dwell on organic regulation, I promise you that. But maybe a couple of thoughts which I think are important beyond a clear, transparent, reliable regulation, which is, I think, first, you know, support for organic farming. You know, I fundamentally don't think that a model where the consumer market is ballooning and the agricultural market is contracting in some countries, I just have a real hard time to see how that works over the next 15 years, okay? So I think we rely heavily on support for organic agriculture in Europe, and of course that is to a certain extent a call to business, but also a call to policy to change the conditions so that becomes more attractive also for more younger farmers. Second point, support to the logo. You know, I think some countries that I think have done really well, they've invested heavily into penetrating the organic logo, making sure it's not one of 50 logos, it is the one that stands out among all of them, you know, and that's certainly something I think for policymakers, but also probably for the industry as such. You know, how can we, between us, find a way to invest into our core brand, if you like, you know, so that would strike me as something really important. And then finally, and to a certain extent, it relates to the support of farming, but it's probably more the support of the food system that we want, you know, which is, you know, how can we find a way to set policy that actually encourages the right type of, you know, food system, you know, and discourages the other one. I think, you know, things like, you know, carbon pricing come to mind, but also other forms of taxation, you know. So I'm positive that will come into the equation in the next 15 years, and we must push that it really does. Yeah. Those are my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Klaus. That gives us a really useful starting point for thinking about what the vision means in practice for business. Turning to research then now, Urs, can you give us some of your thoughts, please?
Thanks a lot, Christopher. When I started to work for organic farming, that was 26 years ago, I asked myself, what gives meaning to what I do? At that time, organic farming was not a niche, it was nothing. And the meaning came out of growth, meaning that we were so excited to see in the last 26 years a permanent growth, a permanent development of organic farming, which at that time never would have ever expected to happen. Nobody. And this gave meaning to what we did at that time. So to really develop a niche market. Within a niche market, there are different rules than within a mainstream markets, because the only thing you have to guarantee is that the consumers are happy with what you do, and it's still growing, and maybe one day when it's no longer growing, you might change a little bit, that you can go back to growing. Because growth alone, although we practice that and we celebrated that every year at Bioforum, doesn't really give a meaning to what you do. So in the next step, I realized that organic agriculture is a model for general agriculture. And this was especially formulated, for instance, by the German government, that organic is the gold standards for sustainability, for general agriculture. And to be a model is completely different than to be a niche market. Model means that you are, in a way, the ideal farming systems the entire agriculture has to head for. And this gave a lot of motivation to me to further improve organic farming so that it can become a real model for all farmers, for our society, to address the challenges. In a way, I then started, for a long time, that has given meaning to what I did and what many of us have been doing. But suddenly everybody wanted to mainstream organic farming because we don't want to be the model, we really want the model to become mainstream. Otherwise we cannot address the global problems like food insecurity, climate change, biodiversity, and so on. You all know that. So to become the solution is the third step. And of course, maybe this is correlated with the fact that you're getting older. From a certain moment on, you really want to help the planet to survive. This is a bigger mission, a very big mission. And if I look at the vision, you are exactly there. 50% of European land, meaning it is extremely ambitious. It is the strategy, the vision for mainstreaming, giving solution to all the problems we have. This is extremely ambitious. If we want to have 50% in Europe, with the current growth rate of the growth rate of the last 10 years, that will take about 45 years. And globally, it would take about 372 years. Meaning that we have to think about that. Is this vision too ambitious? When I talk with young people, with students, and I have discussed the issue of Organic 3.0, meanwhile in the last few months with several hundred students, because everybody wants to know what is behind Organic 3.0, then I see, for instance, that young people are different from people of our own age. For instance, they don't think in taboos. And in a way, we still have in our mind many boundaries in thinking. For young people, they have a completely other approach. And this is, in a way, very motivating. I think that if we have this vision, we need to think about how organic farming will, by maintaining the principles and by maintaining the ecological and social advantages and strengths we have to think about how organic farming wants to participate in the huge knowledge gains and technology development of our time. We have to think about and we have to decide how much we want to participate, and this will be an important work of the next future. I know that meanwhile everybody thinks when I speak that he wants to introduce GMO into organic farming. This is bullshit. But there are so many technologies around, so completely new knowledge, which has never been here in human society that we need to think about that. We can, when knowing everything, we can make our own free decisions. But when we think in taboos, we cannot decide. And this is a very important thing, and this will be a follow-up, maybe, by the IFOAM EU group. It is a brilliant work. I'm very happy about that. But now we have to go further, step by step. So what I suggested in a most recent paper we are writing together, some German authors, is that we create a commission for innovation. Because we need to, I can list within 2 minutes about 50, 60 challenges we have never discussed so far. Some people do it, some farmers do it, some scientists do it, but we have never discussed about that. For instance, in animal breeding, are we really still going for the famous breeder eye, looking at the animal, or are we already in genome-wide selection? And is there a contradiction, or can help one to the other? This is only one example. So there are hundreds, or at least 100 such challenges we have to discuss. We need a platform for that. Maybe it is a European platform, it is a global platform. This can be solved by Marco and by Marcus. Both always look for new challenges. This is a new challenge, go ahead, but we need it. So, if we think in new dimensions, it will be more challenging to communicate with consumers, because what is easy to communicate are very simple messages and pictures. And in organic farming we do that, but we do that also in conventional farming. In conventional bulletins and catalogs, you always see the cow outside on the pasture, never inside in the stable, meaning that everybody does that. But if we want to solve the problems, we need a more complicated communication with consumers. We need to involve them to understand that organic farming and sustainable farming cannot be reduced to extremely simplified pictures, meaning transparency will also be a job in our communication with the consumers. So we don't need to cooperate only with the farmers more intensively, co-innovation. We also need to work more intensively with consumers, meaning co-information. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Urs. And I think the purpose for the ambitious vision is precisely because a vision is a dream and isn't necessarily or isn't obviously a reality. If it made you think in the way that you've just given us your thoughts, then clearly it's been a success already. So thank you for that. So last, I think coming back to the base, if you like, of the supply chain and looking and thinking about farmers, Kurt, your view from the point of view of the person who actually grows the food.
Thank you, Christopher. I'm happy with this new vision. I really am happy. But there are a lot of questions, of course. What does this vision mean for me, for us as farmers? Are there choices made? And when I look to that vision, I see there are some choices made, but other, still work in progress, I think. And sorry, Christopher, I did not read together with you loudly those 2 paragraphs. I don't like dogmas. and prayers. We do that, or we did that in church, and I would like to leave that behind us. I want this vision to be an inspiration because of what it is, not because we read it loudly, but because we believe in it, what's written in it. It is necessary to have this new vision now, because we're on a crossroads in farming, not only organic farming. Which way shall the farming system in Europe, in the world, evolve the next decades? Will it become more and more industrial? Will it become more and more, on a big scale, a farming system in the future without farmers? Or shall it be otherwise, an agroecological future? And that means a lot for us, the organic farming sector. We are on that crossroad. Which way do we go? And I hope to be inspired by this vision to take that road. Because that's our ambition as organic farmers. We don't just want to farm, we want to give an answer to one of the biggest questions. How do we give food to everybody in this world, now and in the future, here and in the south, and taking care of our planet and the ecosystems services it provides for us? That's ambitious, and I read that ambition in this new vision. But we have to stay modest, of course. I think we don't know all the answers. Organic farming is not a system which you can copy and then everything is bling bling done. Fine, no. Organic farming is being modest, stepping on a path. We know which direction it is going to, but we don't know what we will find on that path. That's what we have to discover. This means a lot for our organic standard and for the organic movement. In Dutch we say standard, we translate it as lastenboek. If I translate it again literally, it can mean a book of burden. And sometimes that standard feels like a burden. It's a list of do's and don'ts and all those persons who come to control me if I do it right and if I write it down very fine. I believe more that we as organic farmers and organic sector, we are a movement of people who come together and think about that necessary future we need. And that means that we cannot stand still, a movement. We have to move. So our organic standard has to move also, cannot stand still. And we don't have to make a new organic standard. We will cut down in stone. No, I believe something which is continuously moving and bringing us further to that bright future we need. So we have to be ambitious. We need to be very ambitious, but we don't need a revolution. Farmers don't like revolutions. I cannot grow potatoes in a revolution. I need an evolution. How can we create that evolution? Well, I don't know the answers too. That's what we should develop now. But we should find a kind of an equilibrium between that ambition and creating a vision which is also attractive for all farmers. Because when we want to grow and to make that 50% of all surface in Europe is organic, well, then we have to convince all farmers, old farmers, new farmers. So we have to be attractive. And that's a pity with that standard. Is, just over here, and when I'm here, I'm not organic, and when I'm there, then I'm organic. Hooray, hooray. And when I'm there, I'm also organic. I think it would be interesting if we could be able to create a moving standard. Just make it low. Come on, join us. That's nice. But once you're on that level, we will push you towards that more ambitious, very high level of sustainability. That's maybe something we should develop with IFOAM. And I think we should do it with IFOAM, because now the regulation, we have discussed all afternoon about that fucking regulation. well, keep it like that. I don't want that regulation anymore like that. That's organic 2.0, that regulation. And if we change something on it, it still stays 2.0. In the future, we need a new regulation, 3.0. And European Commission, you have stolen our standard. It's the standard of the organic sector, not of the European Commission. So give back our standard. And we will say what should be written in that standard. And I think that's an ambition IFOAM should take in concern and make it happen. And when I look to the very far future, I hope that we don't need an organic label anymore. When some years ago, when my girl still was little, she asked me, what do you do? And I explained to her about organic farming. And then she looked at me with that beautiful eyes, and she said, I don't understand. So you have to pay because you don't want to pollute with your farm and you want to take extra care for your animals? So what I hope is one very, very far future, that we don't need that organic label anymore, and that I don't have to pay for that control and for that label, but that I get a fair price for my products, that all the external benefits and costs which I create for society should be internalized in my farming system. And that's one important thing, that we need to realize this vision. We need a system change to be make happen this ambition, because in our agricultural system there is a lock-in. This neoliberal free market system is driving farmers in that non-sustainable way, because you are not rewarded in our market when you're operating sustainable, but and you're not punished when you're working unsustainable. So there's a lot of work to do to change that. If not, I think it would be very, very difficult to realize this goal of 50% of the farming land should be organic. So there's a lot of work to do for governments and other international bodies to change this. So no TTIP, no international trade agreements which use food just as a kind of a merchandise. Food is not. Food is a human right, and it should be treated like that in international and national policy. That means also that we need another CAP, Common Agricultural Policy. Now, this Common Agricultural Policy and how it's implemented in the different member states, well, it helps us, that's true, but it's also making no choices. And I hope that this vision, our vision, that it will also inspire governments, international organizations to make it happen and create an environment in which it is possible to make Europe organic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And do you know what I think? I'm not going to start a conversation, a discussion now. I think it's inappropriate for the people here to respond to a question. I think that's the work of tomorrow, where hopefully with our moderators we can get some of the conversations going that develop from the themes that our three sector representatives have brought out. I would like to say that the purpose of reading it out loud was not to generate a sectarian fervour, a sort of a religious zeal. It was to encourage ownership. And I think the way that you three have responded to what Julia and Raffaele have included in the document shows that it has got your ownership by reading it and thinking those difficult thoughts. The other thing I would point out is that it carefully doesn't say all or half of Europe's land managed to organic standards. It says managed, or it says to organic principles. And I think the way in which Urs has painted the picture that we need to free ourselves from a restrictive, prescriptive standard and move on, and you referred to Organic 3.0, is a central concept that we need to develop. Because if we're going to do what Klaus has painted to give an integrated, transparent system, which is based on trust and transparency, then that involves something more than regulation. In a sense, that word, that concept that we've been working with for the 20, 30 years and more has been captured by government and has removed the real sense of innovation and opportunity that Urs painted a picture for. So I think we need to challenge some of those assumptions that the only way is the strict organic standard as it exists at the moment, which doesn't do some things that we want it to do and does stop us doing some things that we don't want to be stopped doing. That's the way that we need to be thinking tomorrow as to how we form strategies to edge closer towards half of Europe's land managed to organic principles, not necessarily to the organic standard. The problem we face is that the word organic has been captured by the authorities, and you can't mention the word without satisfying the standard and meeting the regulation. So we're caught, I believe, in a trap in moving forward to the future, where organic as a word is restricting. It's restricting the people who we're willing to work with, or who are willing to work with us. Because they say, well, actually, it doesn't really matter. We want to do this. We want to do our own thing. So I think finding the way through that and forming strategies to help us get to that point is the start of our work tomorrow. So what I'd like to do is invite Marco Schluter to close the day. We're going to leave, I think, now. We're going to sit down. And I thank you all for sharing in this launch of a vision process that has taken some time, and look forward to the discussion tomorrow. Thank you.